Iconic Sonnia, and this is a pretty special miniature because it's a game-scaled version of Iconic Sculpt, and Iconic is this unique range of miniatures that comes with two miniatures. So far, at least, they've been released with two miniatures, one which is in large scale and one which is in game scale, and it's supposed to portray a character from the game at a particularly meaningful moment in their history. And this one represents Sonia, and actually, the large version has her essentially tormenting a human being and making a witchling thrall. This one is less hardcore. Holds. She's just holding a flame. That's what she's doing. And I don't have the large model for comparison, unfortunately, because unfortunately, it was used for good purpose. I donated it to charity auction, and it has a new happy owner, so I will just work on this one. But to make things a bit more interesting, more unusual, I'll be painting her using very unusual color schemes. So the color scheme will be bright green cloak and very bright green coat, and then maybe black pants, some silver here, and potentially some orange, maybe some orange on the back, on the sheath of the blade, or definitely red hair, and some fire, classic fire with some basic OSL. So that's the plan. And why don't I start with the base? Or actually, you know what? I'll start with the coat. Let me just give a good shake. I'll be using this one as base coat. It's a paint from scale 75 range, which is a very robust, vivid shade of green. And actually, to make it even brighter, I'll mix in some game color fluo yellow, just to keep it super bright, super saturated color. And that's what will serve as the base coat for her coat. So roughly 50-50 mixture, and we'll see where it takes us. Plenty of time, 3 hours to go. No need to hurry whatsoever. I'll just mix the paint on my palette and get this thing going. So we have very bright shade of green. I'll just test it on the piece of paper behind her. You can see it's really lively, very vivid shade of green. So I'm going to just apply it. That looks unusual. And I will be darkening it. So I'm working from brighter colors to darker, which might seem counterintuitive, but I wouldn't say it necessarily gives you better control of the process. Just gives you, I would say, a different control, just a different approach. I know I want some bright shades. That's why I used white base coat. And we'll be starting with very vivid green, then gradually moving to slightly darker shade. So applying it going quite heavy on the miniature. Doesn't look amazing, but that's just the start. And I thought that since I've already painted this miniature over 2 streams several months ago, and I still had this one lying around, I thought that, well, how about painting it now? but doing it differently. So what can I do to make it different? I've been using some oil paints in my recent streams, doing some batch painting, painting 5 miniatures simultaneously. So at some point, I'm just asking myself, what else can I do to keep things diversified and interesting? And I thought I would just paint one of the most iconic models in Malifaux, because Lady Justice has been around since the very beginning of the game. And I'll just paint her differently. Probably there will be no second, I mean, not Lady Justice, but Sonnia Creed. No second Sonnia Creed. That looks like this one. So again, just bold brush strokes. Brush is loaded with paint. I allow it to pull, then remove the excess so that it dries evenly over the whole surface. And I want to allow it to dry really thoroughly before I apply any other colors. Because that way I will be able to really control the saturation of the color that I have in mind. So I bet people who come to the stream over the course of next 3 hours, the first thing that they will have in mind when they see this, all this green, is, well, got to be Bayou or Razor stuff, but nope. Hey, it's Wait Mod. Nice seeing you. Doing an unusual take on Sonnia Creed today. And painting her bright green. Because how many times can you paint? I mean, I've painted a few versions of Sonnia. That's probably this one is my favorite. I even painted the old classic metal version a few years ago. So just want to keep things interesting and do something a bit different. That's the base coat. Let me get it to the camera. So just the base coat laid down. Nothing really. She's a new woman after the mask is off. So something other than brown coat is great. Yeah, that's one way to look at it. And green is actually an interesting color to work with because you can change the hue of the color with yellow. You can do dark green. So there's plenty of possibilities. And I will let it dry thoroughly for now. While I wait for it to dry, I will jump over to the elements on the base. And there are some skulls, some random stuff. I'll just give it a base coat. And I will start with the brightest element. That's what I do. I just give base coat starting with the brightest and the smallest elements before I move on to larger ones. So what I'll do now is I'll just give a quick base coat of skeleton horde to all the skulls on the base. You can even see part of the eye socket. And also there are some skulls on this side. I think it doesn't make much of a difference if the actual shape of skull is not clearly visible from this rubble. They might as well be stones, but actually you can see that, yeah, if you look at different angle, and once the details start filling up, you can actually tell that those are skulls. Now the tombstone, or part of the tombstone. But that's an interesting take, spill paint pot, to look at the miniature fluff-wise and think about painting it according to what happens. I'll go to Griff Charger Gray, which is this grayish but slightly bluish shade. It's pretty neat for non-metallic metal, but I don't think I'll be using non-metallic metal for this one. So right now it's just all about the foundations, those leaves that can be visible. I assume part of the sculpture, so I'm not going to paint them like plants. Just going thoroughly covering the whole thing. And again, this isn't a very this is like a medium gray. It's not very dark, it's not very bright. It's definitely the kind of color that can be modified rather easily. So that's why I choose it as base coat, because I can just tweak it to become darker or brighter depending on what I actually see in the overall composition. Sour apple toffee though. Yeah, it does for the time being at least. And yeah, I notice it gets blurry every now and then if I move it too much. So those tombstones, broken tombstones. The base is pre-made resin base. I just magnetized it. So drilled two holes, put magnets, and use a special holder, which is convenient. I just keep all the miniatures I paint, well, most of the miniatures, at least those that get to travel a bit, in my bag. I keep them magnetized because I found that this is by far just the safest way of transporting your miniatures, because they don't wiggle around. Okay, okay. Now I actually think didn't really notice that the first time around, that there are actually more skulls on the base. There are two next to the large one, which is by her right foot. Yeah, there is one, and there is another one. So 7 skulls in total. That will make for a bit more interesting base. And now for the rest here, I think I will go with something that's between gray and brown. Actually, I might go with I will go with Fire Slayer Flesh, because this is this skin tone which is a bit heavier than Gallimon's flesh that I'll be using for her skin, and that should nicely work with the light gray and bone white that will be applied later on for the skulls. So just going over all the areas around the details on the base. I think that when it comes to painting humans, well, at least miniatures representing humans in Malifor, yeah, I find them somewhat less appealing than demons, monsters, weird creatures. But then at the same time, painting humans means in a way that you work with something familiar, something that you've painted before, and that's one way of looking at the progression of your skills. Like, how does this model compare to many other similar ones that I painted in the past? What can I improve? Which areas can I paint faster, more efficiently? Just a kind of reality check. Almost done with the base color on the base, and then I will paint the rim black because I find that it just keeps the focus better on the miniature. But it already looks pretty good. I mean, contrast paints are such a great tool. Because if I wanted just the base ready, I could I could color it ready even now. 3 different colors, some highlights, some basic highlights. Maybe I'll just put some brown in between the broken pieces of tombstone. Yeah. And that's it. Now I'll paint the rim of the base black. And things will become a bit clearer then. I'll just take her off of the holder for a second as I paint the rim of the base. So just using a side of thick brush, going around with heavy matte black. Get an even coverage. Because if you apply too much, it just looks bad when it starts drying. It's no way it can dry evenly, and even the surface is affected. Just clean the brush. And there is the base of the base goes on the base. But it, as I said, it already looks really solid, decent base coat. I think I'll just go with marking out all the key colors. And who knows, maybe I'll get her painted faster than in 3 hours. I just, I just keep, I just feel like I'm very motivated to see it through, to paint miniature from the beginning to the end completely. And I work faster because I'm just focused on painting, no distractions, just painting, and occasionally some chat discussion, which is always nice. Okay, maybe actually I'll just work with the base coat a little bit for the green and make sure there are no areas that are white. Yeah, I think that there are some areas that are hard to get to, which might still have a trace of white on them, and I want to get rid of it. All right, that's it. Now, next thing that I will do is probably the black elements. Actually, the black, because I can do quite a lot with black. So for black, when I want to base coat black on a bright miniature, I go to green black, give it a good shake. A little more. That's good enough. Put it on my palette, which is an old CD. Oh, hey Doug. Good seeing you. Hope things are well. And hope Hope you're ready for your stream tomorrow because you got some cool stuff planned. A miniature that I'm definitely looking forward to seeing for the first time. Something new. I'm not gonna spoil it. I'll let you do the surprise, or actually, the surprise will be visible right before you stream on weird social media profiles. But yeah, cool stuff. Yeah, that's a very green Sonia. That's a different take on Sonia. And I was just saying earlier that I've painted Sonia quite a few times already. So I want to do something different, something unusual, and that's just the base coat for now. That's the color I will tweak with different glazes and washes. But for now, it's super bright and it will be very bright in the end because I intend to keep it very bright. So it will stay like that, but it will be a more refined type of green. I'm just painting the inside. The belts will be a bit different. Yeah, it's a fun model. I painted the iconic version a while ago over the course of two separate streams because there are two huge miniatures in it. One Witchling Thrall in the making and one Sonia. So the iconic, the large scale model is slightly different because it has a Witchling Thrall kneeling and screaming. And Sonia, this one just has a something that looks like could be a burning skull or just some fire that she is holding in her hands. So just base coating for now and working my way around all the main areas, trying to keep it under control. When it becomes too much, I just take the brush and get some quick fixes in. But yeah, that's a slow start, but not hurrying, plenty of time left. Oh yeah, the iconic light DJ is quite surprising. It's just the path not taken, I believe, is the name of the box, where you have a miniature that doesn't look like Lady Justice in game. But it's a cool, actually, that's a cool way of kind of recycling the ideas, the well established images of certain characters and presenting them in a new light. Dreamer, Titania is amazing, and I had the pleasure of painting both versions. But Dreamer is pretty cool too. Completely different than any of the in-game versions. And the nice thing is that, yeah, it's the path not taken. It's where she might have gone. She had continued as a necromancer. Yeah. And the cool thing is that these boxes feature a play size game, a play size miniature that you can just use as a regular gaming piece. But I don't think there is any consensus on whether these are core versions of the master. I mean, the original versions, the OG versions, or the titled versions. But I would argue that as long as the base is correct, this could probably be used as both versions. And with Sonia, it isn't that much of an issue because both her versions come on 30mm base. Yeah, I think so. And as an organizer, I'm guessing you're perfectly fine with using the iconic miniatures as either version as long as the base is the right size. That's the black on the front and some black on the back as well because we have this mean looking chain. So my favorite memory of playing, I don't think I've ever faced her in the third edition, so can't say much about it. But I did play a few games in the first edition using Sonia. Was it first or maybe second edition? Oh, I think both. Definitely played some games in the second edition. So my heard someone saying they wanted to use the big iconic dreamer as a teddy. Yeah, why not? Yeah, that's a big teddy. It's on a teddy on a trolley, but who cares? It's a big teddy. So my favorite memory of using Sonia in an actual game. So it must have been the second edition, early days of second edition. So she had the ability to that if something died as a result of burning near her, then she could, I think she could just spend a soul stone. I believe that's how the rule worked, and summon Witchling Stalker in place of the miniature that burned to death. So in my that was probably the biggest highlight ever that I've had while playing Malifaux, and I was facing Victorious, and I survived turn one onslaught, and in turn two I was able to burn one to death, summon a Witchling Stalker, and that Witchling Stalker, which just a few minutes ago had been one of the Vics, killed the other Vic. So that was like all stars align scenario, a perfect case, and that was fun. I don't recall all the details of how that actually worked, but you could in fact summon Witchling Stalkers if you played as Sonya. I think that the stipulation was that a model had to die as a result of burning next to her, and then she could summon. But I could be wrong. But that was fun for sure. And I lost that game, which seems ridiculous, but I just probably just zoned in on doing a cool thing, and I was so focused on doing that that I just neglected other important things that had to happen in the game. And we all know that Malifa is not Kilifa. I mean, Kilifa can be legit if you can just go all in. And that's what I've been playing with Castor, the second version. It's definitely a Kilifa. I even played a kick the can scenario with him and almost tabled my opponent, but again, lost the game. Because killing is not everything in this game. Right, so the black elements are base coated. I'll just even out all those tiny bits of white still showing through. That's beginning to look like a miniature, like a painted miniature, proper painted miniature. And I can see already that some green needs to be added to the bottom. And here as well. And I'm guessing that will be fine. Yeah, roughly fine. So that's where I am. Let me just pause real quick. So that's Sonia currently in the back. You can see it's just very, very basic coverage of bright green. It doesn't look like anything much right now. That's just right now because it will change. Maybe I'll hold the camera at a slightly different angle and that should, yeah, that should improve the quality. Now I guess the skin. So I'll be just laying the foundation with Gallimon flesh. Give it a good shake. And paint the face and the hands, because there isn't that much skin visible on this miniature. So I'll just paint the hands here with Gallimon flesh, and also use some green still on the inner part. And also now I observe that there is still some mold line visible, a mold line visible on the flaming part. Just hard to get to, but I'll just cut it away. And then apply the base coat again, reapply the base coat. And I guess now the hair. For the hair, I will go with heavy orange, or maybe, yeah, I'll go with this one. And I'll just paint the hair, because this one can be tweaked into red. That's something that I might as well do later on. Just being careful, not overloading the brush with paint so that it flows off the bristle in a more controlled manner. And just make sure that I cover everything. Her face is surrounded. It's a kind of dynamic pose that she has. So it looks very basic. That's perfectly fine. I actually applied by mistake some on the face. I can try to remove it now, but I will be highlighting the face anyway, so that's not a biggie. Still can be fixed. That's why I want to block the color for her early on, because that way any kind of highlights I put there won't be affected negatively by it. Now as for the blouse that you can see from here, I think I'll go with just red there. So I'll go with Blood Angels Red. And just let a small dot flow in. Mhm. Just like that. Just remove the excess. And some details still remain, like the sheath for the blade and the belt here, and obviously the fire. So what I'll do first off is I will maybe paint this in dark brown. I'll use Gorgranta fur. Painting the coat will take major part of the next hour, I believe, because this will be all about going smooth with highlights. Now I'm just using a smaller brush to apply dark brown on the sheath here from all angles. It's actually the miniature it's kind of bendy, so I'll just take advantage of it because I can bend it into shape because it's made of this slightly rubbery plastic, and I can bend it back to the desired shape, something that you can't really do with plastics. So that's a bit of an advantage of, well, of this type of material. All right, maybe a bit more brown just to keep it more saturated. Some white dots, which I can just as well fill with brown, because I'll be going with silver and dark glazes anyways. So this is the belt. Just twirl it into proper shape. And maybe the fire, I'll just put some yellow just to make it look different so that it doesn't stay pure white. Just apply quick touch of fluo yellow. I will do some OSL, so object source lighting, later on around the face, hands, and other areas. There are different ways you can approach object source lighting. You can do it the fast way, the easy way, the time consuming way, the airbrush way. I'll do something in between the easy way and the fast way. Okay, so that's Sonnia base coated. So all the base colors are laid down. Let me just get a good angle. Is it a good angle? That's a good angle. Yeah, so everything is base coated. And now it's going to be all about adding details, layers of paints, and all the jazz. So to begin with, I think I'll start with the skin. Because right now it looks decent. I mean, Gallimon flesh makes skin look good. I would say good, even more than decent. It makes it look good already. But of course, we want to do more than good. So I'll just grab two colors that I'll be working with. So it's rosy flesh and pale flesh. Perfect for human skin tone. And since we already have a kind of foundation, I'll just go ahead and apply slightly diluted rose flesh. I mean diluted, I just thin it down with water very slightly. And apply it directly over the raised areas, leaving a little bit of Gallimon flesh showing in the recessed areas. And if you do these two simple steps, it already looks good. The hands won't be really that visible. Let's give a good shake to this one. Vortex shaker is such a good addition to the hobby table. If you don't use it, I do encourage you to consider it. I actually learned about the existence of such a wonderful device while my fellow word painter was streaming, so Doug uses it frequently, and it's not that expensive, and it really helps with making sure that the pigment on the paint is evenly distributed, and just the paint, simply put, the paint just works better. So I switched to a slightly smaller brush, and I mixed the base skin tone with a slightly brighter one, and I'm applying it over gradually smaller area, sticking to the raised area, of course. Thinning it down and going very lightly. Just making sure that the chin, that the upper lip, those areas are properly highlighted. The hands are not that important here because they will be holding a flame, so they won't be that visible later on. I can still use the slightly darker shade to fill in the recessed areas. And I think I will do the glowy eye now. Guess it's fairly simple. All you need is a dot of red, a larger dot of red in the middle. So I'll just apply it. I mean, it may look easy. I just landed perfectly. But guys, trust me, it just takes practice. Working on tiny elements just takes practice to feel comfortable. I remember painting my first batch of eyes with acrylic paints. It was around the time when the first version of Lord of the Rings strategy battle game was released by Games Workshop, so must have been something around 2007, 2008, maybe 2009. And I had a box of those Minas Tirith warriors who were heavily armored. It wasn't one of the first boxes, so it must have been a bit later on. And just essentially a hint of ice was visible because they had helms with visors. And that was a good exercise in painting ice. I mean, I was cursing it at that time. That gave me a lot of practice. I was painting like around 24, I believe. 24, I believe. Yeah, probably 24 miniatures in a box. So painting 24 pairs of eyes on uneven surface, hidden with partly obscured with helm. That was hell, but in a good way because it was a lot of practice that I got. Yeah, there's the eye, and I'll just let the paint dry a little bit because otherwise, if I apply a glaze right now, it would just come off. So, approaching the first hour of the stream and doing pretty well in terms of progress. But things will slow down considerably once I start working on the code. Yeah, I think I'm ready. I'll just give a good shake to this glaze. And just apply it heavily over the eye. Becomes fully red, nothing is visible, too much of it, so I remove the excess, and there it is. Glowy eye. Whoops, I'll try to make it visible. Yeah, that's the glowy eye. Now let's paint the lips. And for that I will go with Purple Alchemy. This one. There is a very thin line of the lips. So I want to be very precise with paint application now, and I'll try to hold it in a way that makes it possible for you guys to see what I'm doing. Yep, there's the lower lip covered. And I will just mix it with a bit of white so that it becomes bright pink, and highlight it. That's more like it. So I guess it's now that I have the skin covered pretty much because I'm not too concerned about the hands. The hands will not be really visible with the fire she's holding. So I'll start working on her coat. And for that, I will grab a medium sized brush and I'll just go with Ink10 Slime from Intensity Scale 75 color range. Just test it. Maybe I'll test it in some area where it's, yeah, not that impactful. Essentially, I will be covering, I guess, most of it because it kind of evens it out, makes the whole thing look more smooth. So just be careful not to go crazy. I just need a bit more of green on my palette. Oh, the current word painting contest. Oh yes, the one which features painting armor. Yeah, that's a good one. The fat cap is definitely a good take. It's not the easiest miniature to paint because it's so different than all Malifaux miniatures. But an ambitious take for sure, and I commend it. Good choice. Oh, it would be great if you could throw in the link to the contest since you brought it up. Why not? Some people may not be aware that it's happening, even though it was announced on the, I think, over the past couple of days. And those painting competitions always bring out the best in painters. Oh yeah, heavy metal. So if you want to have a good excuse to paint a miniature that features some armor, it can be true metallic metal, non-metallic metal, it can be chrome, whatever you feel like. If you need some additional encouragement to paint it to high quality, then make sure you take part in this painting competition. So it just puts the extra pressure on you to do an even better paint job than you can. And you can learn a lot by just going the extra mile while painting and making sure you make your highlights a little bit smoother or a little bit more precise than usually. So now I'm going over the whole coat, and essentially what I'm doing is I'm slightly darkening it by using a very slightly darker shade of vivid green. It's still super bright, but it's becoming a bit more solid. So that's some more green. And it's already becoming to look a bit more settled. I think the next one will be orc skin for deeper shades, but I will need for it to dry properly. And while it dries, you can still see some elements which were touched up in the process by other paints. So I'm going to cover them with a bit of a touch of quick touch of off white. Off white. That's not a tongue twister. Come on, shouldn't be too hard to say. Just touch up on those elements which came into contact with different color than I meant for it. So like here towards the edge, just think that also gives me an idea that painting over the edges of those highlights with white or off-white might be a good idea. Now I see also there is a belt holding the sword that I didn't notice the first time around. All right. But those parts, those inner flaps, they will definitely be darker in here than they are here. That's the plan. That's the plan. The execution is a process. Yeah, it's becoming dry, so I can keep on saturating it. And I will use orc skin now. Just give it a good shake. How to tell that you've given it a good shake? You just need to look at the bottom of the container. If there is no movement there, that means that the pigment which forms the paint with the flow improver inside. So flow improver is a kind of medium that ensures the proper distribution of pigment in the liquid. And if there is no movement, then it probably could use a bit more shaking. That's better now. And I will use my mini palette, which is made from old 30mm base. And now we're going into those warmer shades. More brownish, I would say, range. So again, mid-size brush, and I'll start with going over the dark recessed areas. Well, the areas which I want to be darker. So definitely in here, I would say maybe the whole inner part could be covered with it. Same on the left side. Just making sure I don't go too heavy. And now I'll switch to a smaller brush. Slightly smaller. And I'm just focusing more on those recessed areas. Trying to leave some of the raised area in the super bright shade. And you know that it takes time with brush work. With airbrush, I would probably be able to get super smooth transition to bright green from black base coat in a matter of minutes. But I don't feel comfortable using airbrush. I don't feel comfortable enough to bring it to the stream. Haven't used it. Haven't used mine in a couple of like more than a year, maybe even more than 2 years. Just became annoying to get the right flow of the paint, and the nozzle kept on clogging, and I just gave up at some point. I thought, nah, I'll just stick to brush only. And I just think that also I mean, airbrush is great for giving you those initial super smooth highlights, but you still need to do brush work afterwards, unless you're a pro like Angel Giraldes and you can paint eyes with airbrush. And yes, he can do it. There's a video where he does it on YouTube. But I just find that I have more fun if I work with brush only. Okay, so that green is coming along nicely, looking much more saturated. Let me just pause for a second. And I know that it's hit directly with light. The light reflects off of it. But it's already becoming to look more interesting. And those pens are definitely way too dark. All right. So time to let it dry. And I might do the hair now, actually, while I wait. Maybe the base, or I think I'll do the hair. So for the hair, I will go with orange. With maybe I'll go with hot orange and orange fire. Those colors seem to be named properly for working with Sonnia, who's all about fire. Give them a good shake. So 1 hour into the stream, and we have a miniature that I could call tabletop ready. Decent tabletop ready. And obviously we want more. We want more than tabletop quality. So painting the hair now. For the hair, the easiest way is just to apply dry brush. And that's fine. That will look good. But with dry brush, the thing is that if you repeat the dry brush process, the paint catches on the raised areas, doesn't really help with gradual buildup of highlights. So if you want to get a better result, you just need to take the time. Take your time and just work on highlights the standard way. So the classic way, just picking out the individual strands of hair, painting along them, trying to leave the darker paint visible in the recessed area, just taking it slow. So just going with essentially directly from the container. Maybe I'll just add a tiny drop of water so that the consistency is tiny bit thinner. Okay, so the color of the hair is now a bit more solid. I think I'll go with very fiery look, like maybe even highlight it to bright yellow. So the difference is very gradually. Hey, thank you. I paint fast when get locked in. When I'm really focused on painting. It never happens when I paint off screen. When I paint during the streams, I just become much, much more efficient. I just want to use the time well, right? To make sure that a lot can happen within this 1 hour that I have. Right, so now the hair. The hair continued, brighter shade of orange. And I'll try to hold it at an angle that makes it possible for you guys to follow and for me to see, which sounds easy, but trust me, it's not. So now the crucial thing is not to paint over the completely over the area which had just been covered with slightly darker shade of orange, and that way you build this smooth transition from the recessed areas to the bright spots. All right. And that's clearly not bright enough. I want to go much brighter, so I'll go to yellow. So the yellow I'll be using, it's called gold yellow, which is slightly orangish, very slightly. And I will switch to smaller brush because it kind of forces me to leave less paint on the surface of the miniature. That's already going to make an impact to go towards this fiery look on the hair. Just don't apply too much, especially avoid recessed areas. So thin lines along the strand of hair. Oh yeah, just one model tonight. Yeah, that's true. You know, sometimes one is enough. I think that this miniature is complex enough to make it interesting for one stream. So my plan for next streams is, well, to be honest, I'm not sure. I will be painting some dual umbra models, so that could be something. But I'll see. Haven't really made up my mind yet. There's plenty of time. All I know that tomorrow Doug will be painting something that hasn't been, well, not a new release, but a miniature that I haven't really seen anywhere painted, at least. But I'm not going to spoil the fun. You'll have to check in same time tomorrow. I know I will. I think that I will go one step further, so a slightly brighter. It's called sun yellow. And now I'll just add a quick touch of quick, just a touch, doesn't have to be quick. Just trying to keep it like towards the mid section of each strand, trying to visualize how the light coming from the top would hit it and where the hair should be brightest. And it kind of starts looking like fire, which is okay for a redhead who specializes in fire magic. Yeah, I think that's almost enough for the hair. Maybe a bit more here. I think that, yeah. Just looking at some raised areas which can still be highlighted. And that seems fine. Maybe a bit more towards the back. Just looking at those strands of hair that could still use a little bit of touch up. Seems good. Now I will do darker shades on the cloak. On the coat. So for the coat, I will go with mix. I will mix these two. I will mix orc skin with troll skin. So those are contrast paints. Essentially the same thing as contrast paints. only a bit better, I think. At least that's my take on Vallejo paints, that they are slightly better because they apply better and they have better consistency and they are way cheaper in terms of prices. All right, let's see how it goes with the mix. I'll just mix these two to form a darker green. It's not much darker, but that's a process that I'm going through. So with this process in mind, I will just keep on darkening it. And again, as the green coat will continue to dry, I will switch to work on other elements of the miniature. And again, I'm trying to load heavier the parts which are recessed versus those that are raised. I'll still touch up the raised areas with brighter shade, but that will come later. Now, one shout out that I want to make, big shout out, and guys, I do encourage you to come and play with us because in September this year, so September 2nd and 3rd, Saturday and Sunday, we'll be running Polish Malifaux Nationals in the beautiful historic city of Kraków, which is one of the most amazing places to visit in Poland. So I'm sure that Kim will share us. Oh yes, that's the link. Thank you, Kim. Thank you so much. Go check it out. Consider visiting Poland. Great opportunity. So far we have 22 players confirmed with 5 different nationalities, I believe, and we hope to get many more players and many more nationalities. I mean, we are aiming for around 40 people, so there's still plenty of time. The swag bag will be amazing. It will be memorable. Last time we had nationals, the swag bag exceeded all my expectations. I mean, honestly, guys, biggest swag bag I've ever received at a tournament. But it's not all about the swag bag, right? It's about visiting interesting place and having games of Malifaux. So for while it continues to dry, it will get darker. As you can see, it's already become much darker. It's not that yellowish shade of green. It's more subdued, darker shade of green. And as we are approaching the half of the stream, it's looking pretty good in terms of progress. Now I think I'll do the brown parts. For the brown parts, let me just grab some brown paints. So those are the 3 that I want to use. Grunge brown, parasite brown, and bronze brown. Hey, good idea to start the game, and Word is very supportive of local metas. So I'm sure they will help you do that. I remember the last Polish nationals. We had 4 games on day one and 2 games on day two, and the reasoning being let people come home earlier. But man, the first day was just heavy on the brain. 4 games in one day wasn't easy. I think I had a narrow loss, 2 wins, and a loss. That was my balance game day one, and day two I was just too exhausted to compete, and I just lost my 2 remaining games. But I had a lot of fun. Keeping it brighter, so moving towards the edges, just adding a drop of water and making sure that the middle of the belt stays brown while I work on the edges. Trying to make the edge highlights a bit less regular, but distinctly visible. And that's a great thing about Vallejo paints, is that those colors level themselves really well on the miniature. And if you use different shades of the same color, it's just easy to make this nice transition from darker towards brighter. Because those paints just work so well together. So that's just pause for a second. So that's where we're at. So the brown is becoming a bit more concrete. I think there is a bit of something like a necklace as far as I remember. So I'm just painted maybe gold later on. Oh, this one needs a bit more shaking. Now the consistency is proper. Brighter shade of brown, and again trying to go somewhat less regular with edge highlights on the belt so that they do not look perfectly even. Just sorry, wasn't holding it at the right angle. Try to do better. So going for a kind of texture look here. So making it appear as if the highlights are more random, but the intention is to just make it look as if there is some kind of texture. And just a few dots in the middle. So essentially it's more like stippling, so just dabbing it with brush. But it's all about balancing the load on the brush properly. I mean properly, it's not, doesn't makes it sound like there is proper and improper way. What I mean by properly is carefully rather than properly. So think right now the elements that are finished or semi-finished, the face, the hair, and the leather straps. But actually, now that I think of it, there is one more leather strap, and this is the one that she has here that goes from the back to the front, and I'll need to go over it with brown for now, just a thin layer of brown. Now I'm sorry if I'm making it unclear and obscure and blocking the view, but trust me, it's not easy to reach an area under her arm. And a bit of highlight. So again, stippling like technique. So essentially just dabbing it with the tip of the brush and forming some kind of semi-regular pattern. Actually, as far as I remember from painting the Iconic version, she had a necklace that looked like a bird skull. So I'll just paint it bright brown and leave it like that for the time being. And I guess I can continue working on the coat. So there we go, let's continue. Now I'll go with troll green mixed with orc green, but this time I will use like 2/3 of troll green. So more like a 60 to 40% mix. And again, on the interior part, so the part to the front, I will go a bit darker, so I'll go over the whole area of green, and I will be more focused on the recessed areas when I go towards the back area. Now towards the back and towards the back, I'm trying to focus more on those recessed areas, so just using the mix that contains the paint which has been used for previous shade and adding still darker shade to that mix. That allows me for this gradual transition towards darker colors in the recessed areas. And time flies by so fast. It's already almost middle of May, almost half of the year, and we are still waiting for March errata, right? I mean, I know that some people expect that there will be changes, but it gets where this taking well thought out strategy typically towards implementing any changes to the models that have been released. And let's see what happens this time around. But my guess, maybe it's an optimistic guess, is that we could end up playing the Polish nationals using different gaining grounds that we currently have. You never know. Okay, so that green is coming along nicely. Looks super bright and shiny, but that's just a matter of lighting. The lighting, the paint is not fully dry. The light hits it directly, but what I've been able to establish so far is to have this smooth transition from the very bright, which is at the in the middle of the raised area, towards this much darker shade in the recessed area. And I will continue doing that, allowing it to dry in the meanwhile. And while it dries, I might as well jump to the base. And for the base, I will give it a bit of dry brush. So I'll use off-white. And give it a quick dry brush. The trick about dry brush is that you want to be careful when you remove the excess of paint from the bristles, because you want the paint to still be there, because otherwise most of it comes off of it and you can barely paint anything with it. So dry brush, the name of this painting technique, is kind of deceptive because the bristle of the brush shouldn't be completely dry. It still needs to hold some paint, because otherwise it just doesn't make any impact whatever you do with it. However you try to put the paint on the miniature. All right. Now for the skulls, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna use a light glaze brown. Let me just rub it. Soft tone. I'll mix it with water. Just add a drop of water. And apply it to the skull. And while I have light brown glaze, I will also let it flow into the recessed areas on the tombstone. Maybe I'll even add a light touch of green. That might be just too much green. And I will now use the same color which I used for dry brushing, but thin it down. And while the glaze is still fresh, I'll just apply it to the skulls. That will allow me to do some kind of wet blending and blend the base color with the highlights easily. That's it, nice and easy. Maybe slightly brighter. Actually, I can jump to white directly for those final touch-ups on the skulls. Just thinning it down slightly and just really focusing on the most raised areas on those skulls. And I will continue adding shadows to the coat because it seems to be dry. Yeah. So now it's going to be pure troll green. As you can see, I'm just taking my time, moving very gradually from the super bright shade that I started with to gradually darker. Still plenty of time, more than an hour to go, so feeling pretty confident I can finish it in time. But it's never about rushing through it, it's about enjoying the process. So the same thing, I'm just trying to go heavier on the front part, because that way the fire will become much more heavily pronounced. And again, just going to the recessed areas and trying to really cover the deepest shade, the most recessed area. Same towards the upper section. I think it's getting closer to finish on this part of the miniature. But I'll still be putting some highlights in. Sonnia Creed, yes. Hey, Defective Guys, nice seeing you. So that's an unusual take on Sonnia Creed. Sonnia in green. Why? Because I've painted different versions of Sonnia, never did it in green. I thought it would be nice exercise to do something slightly different. Looks super glossy right now. Hard to really tell what the quality of the highlights is, but it is what it is. It won't get much better with the lighting I have, which hits the highlight directly before it dries. Ooh, and now it's become blurry. Let me bring it up. Yep, that's better. So I think now I'll go for highlights on the bands. And I will use dark gray for that. Mixed with some black. I will add a touch of black to that. And I'll start the highlights on the bands. So I'm preparing a very dark mix of gray. And I'll just be applying it straight away, straight on that miniature. So that black gradually turns into light gray. And the thing I have in mind is to make sure that it looks black, but that it's a bit brighter. So already adding some highlight. Some more visible brush strokes to imitate the folds of the creases on the material. But the fact is, that's what I said at the beginning of the screen, that if someone drops in later on and sees what I'm doing to this Sonnia, they might be surprised. All right, now maybe enough of the word towards the back. I will still add some highlights. I will go maybe a bit darker here. And to go a bit darker, I will take one more paint. The green tone. And let's see what happens when I apply this much darker shade. Oh, it is darker, but this is more of a glaze, so it won't. Maybe it will take away some of the shine. And it will flow nicely into the recessed area, just reinforcing the shaded parts. Right. Orange upset. Well, what did she do to you to make you feel so negative towards her? Did you get touched up by flame the wrong way? I can't really comment because I haven't faced her in the third edition of Malifaux, so I have no idea really. I mean, you can read a card and get the gist of it, but until you face Master on the table, you can just Furycraft. So I assume you faced her and it wasn't a positive experience. That's what I'm getting from what you've written. She is a crime. Wow, that's rough. That is rough indeed. Still need to add one brown belt here. One brown strap. So I'll go back to brown. For a second. Touch this one up. But I remember that in the second edition, if you didn't know what you were coming up against, I mean, that's the thing that when you see the master for the first time on the opposite side of the table, then it's most cases it will be an uphill battle. Oh yeah, she is well, she's the end justifies the means kind of person, but she does it excessively. So now let's do the other strap that holds her gun. So I'm just stippling in some highlights on it. Yeah, in a way, she epitomizes a lot of values of the guild and various in quotation marks, or what guild wants to be perceived as values. So kind of stippling in some highlights, and I'll add a few more. I'll just let it dry. That's where I'm at. And maybe a quick one more touch of bright brown. Just a few more highlights. But the thing about painting with contrast and going from bright to dark is that it looks super shiny now. But once I apply matte varnish, it's just going to be a game changer because it just kind of brings it all together in such a nice and elegant way. Her biggest crime was dissing Perdita as being just a co-worker and not inviting her to the poker game. Oh, that's mean. That is mean indeed. Now I wonder, should I do the metallics next? Or maybe I'll just paint the skull. So I'll just mix in some off-white for a quick highlight. And then maybe pure white. Oh yes, I have painted the big version, and you can find her on my Instagram account. Just you need to scroll down a few months back. But unfortunately, I don't have the big version at home because I donated it to a charity auction during our Christmas tournament, and that was an auction, and the highest bidder took her home and paid money for a good cause. But the larger version is just different. She holds the head of a witchling thrall who is suffering immensely. I think I can still go heavier with the dark green. Actually, yes, there is a darker green. Oh, the hands. I mean, I have a video I- of how do you call it? Lazy Suze. That's the name of this device, which spins the miniature. So you can have a look at my Instagram. There is the video of 360 view of this miniature. Maybe that will help. Just going with even darker green in the recessed areas. Going really full dark. Now I need to switch to a smaller brush. Yeah, actually, the warm water trick is good. You can use warm water, bend it into proper shape, and then immediately after you do that, you go with cold water, and it kind of fixes it in place. I think it's just a casting process that the material can bend and remain an imperfect shape, but it's just typically easy thing to quickly fix without much effort. So I'm just now going around the miniature and filling in the most recessed areas with the darkest contrast green paint I have. So that's Sonia. Some progress, some more progress on her. Now I think I'll go with the metallics next. Or maybe I can still actually put a bit of highlights. I just need to grab a bright shade of green. I will go with Scorpy green. That's super bright. And I will even add some fluo yellow. Mix it and just land a few brush strokes on the raised areas. Actually, I can just mix it on the piece of paper because it's just for some, essentially for some touch-ups. Just keeping those raised areas slightly brighter. And I know it's imperfect with the lighting, but guys, trust me, once I spray matte varnish on that, things will just come together nicely. So just some light touch-ups, because that way the highlights now will nicely blend in with the rest. I'll still use some pure white maybe, or off-white for some extreme highlights along the very edges. Oh, excellent. Thank you for the links. Thank you. It's a cool model, really. Cool model. Cool fiery model. Yeah. But I did enjoy painting the large scale version too. Such a nice model. Can't wait to see if Word continues with this idea of creating. I think we've yet to see the Shameless version, right? Because this one hasn't been released yet, as far as I remember. So now let's do the metallics, I guess. We have 1 hour to go. So metallics, then fire, and then it's a wrap. But let's not hurry. I can still do some work on the base. See, that's the advantage of having plenty of time on my hands, knowing that I don't need to hurry. So what I'm gonna do now is I will just add some green, mix with a touch of brown, and just put it, a little bit of it, on those broken tombstones on the base, so that they look like there's some moss covering them. I can do that around the skulls as well, especially in those recessed areas. I think that some touch of green would work nicely also with the green cloak. Green coat, I mean, yeah, that's more like it. Then I went with some super smooth highlights on the trousers. Now I will do a bit more highlights on the very careful highlights on the coat, but just the kind of edge highlights. I mean, edge highlights is something that you associate with vehicles, space marine, and all that jazz. So that's not this kind of edge highlight. I'll just carefully go with slightly watered down off white. And just touch up using the side of the brush. I'm just going over the edges, really. So that's something that will make the overall structure really pop. because then it's a kind of external frame for the miniature. That's how I at least conceptualize it. That gives it, that improves the overall perception. And I will do the same towards the back. So again, thinning down the paint, making sure that it's not directly from the pot, adding a drop of water to it. Just became so focused that I got silent. This is the moment where things are beginning to slowly come together. Oh, the bass. The bass. Thank you for the comment. I appreciate it really. Uh, I donated it because I thought that if I was to donate anything, that at least I might donate something that could have more value. But the base, so I bought it. It's a resin base, and you need to look up Micro Art Studio. It's a Polish company, but they have worldwide availability. I mean, I'm sure you can, if you're located in the UK, you can get the bases there. And that was, can't remember right now. I think 70 millimeter or 80 millimeter base. It's called mosaic base or some kind of mosaic pattern, and I just painted all the details separately. So some that was actually I didn't paint it on during the stream because I focused on the model only, but that took a while. I think that I can't remember now how large the miniature was. If you ping me on Discord later today or tomorrow, I'll just try to look it up for you because I should have some history of purchase. I can't recall exactly, but I can give you a link if you just ping me directly. But that was the right size for the base, and I pinned her to the base so that she held there firmly. All right, I guess the code is done and time to start working on the metallics and then on the fire. Yep, metallics now. Micro art is actually the base here. It's a resin base for micro art. It's just magnetized. Yeah, I really like them. Great quality, and a lot of my miniatures are based on micro art stuff. And no, I don't get paid to say that. It's just, recognizing, giving proper respect to people who create good quality stuff. No, metallics. So metallics I will go with two colors. So I'll go with chainmail and silver. As you can see, those are quite different. The chainmail is much darker, giving it a good mix now. And I will base coat the metal element. I just need to give it even better shake. That should be fine. And now let's give a base coat to those metal elements. So just lightly going over the metal elements and yeah, just, I know it seems super easy, but guys, really trust me, it's a matter of practice to get good control of the brush. And I've painted by now definitely by far more than 1,000 Malifor miniatures only, and I've painted lots of miniatures for other systems, so it just comes with experience. Because what I'm doing now is I'm just putting a layer of silver on all those elements that will be metal, but trying to also leave some of the black showing through in the recessed areas. It's a dark shade of silver, so it won't be that immediately impactful, which is good because I can then work on highlighting it and then glazing it and then highlighting it and glazing it. So when I, for example, with chain, rather than painting it, twisting it to the side all the time to make sure I paint it from all sides, what I'll do instead is I'll just go from one side, then flip to another side, paint at a different angle. So now I'll switch to this side, maybe hold it upside down to make sure I get it all covered evenly from this angle. And this angle as well. Okay, that's silver. Now, the thing to bear in mind when you use metallic paints is that if I use one container for dirty water, if I put brush with some traces of metallics on it, the water will get contaminated because there are some particles that will float around and that will impact the painting process. So instead, what I suggest doing is get hold of one of those brush rinsers. This one is from Green Stuff World. Let me just showcase this one to you fully. Hopefully you can see it. So what happens is that you just rinse the brush and you can even see, I mean, probably you cannot see, but trust me, there are particles of silver visible already here, but I don't care really because I just press the button and the dirty water goes down. And I can just rinse the brush and the dirty water goes down. Do it as many times as needed and the brush is clean. very good thing to use, and I highly recommend it. Makes it so much easier. Now back to Sonia, and I need to lower my camera, get back to the angle which I had previously. Yeah, something like that. All right, 50 minutes to go. Plenty of stuff to do, but plenty of time left. So I'm not worried at this point. So what I'll do now is I'll go with silver. Oops. So this brighter silver, which is actually much brighter. Get a smaller brush and put some highlights on this dark silver that I had applied before. Okay, there we go. The focus is in. But this time I'll just be more deliberate and try to rather than going over the whole surface, which I had covered before, I'll try to paint like 40% of each bit that I covered with darker shade of silver before. The same on the other side. And the back. And again, not trying to cover each bit completely, but rather going for around 40% of each fragment that I had covered with silver before. And please note that the black in the recessed area still remains black, because that's the idea. We want some deep shades to remain. Now the blade and a different angle. So this side to be covered completely. So it already looks more three-dimensional and better. And then I will take my sweet time painting the flame, because that will be taking more time. Yeah. Now for the silver. What I'm going to do now is mix a bit of aromatic blue with neon oil. I know it's a bit of unusual mix, but aromatic, I just think that you can't go wrong with aromatic blue. By far one of the best contrast paints that I've ever used. So I'll just mix it on the base, maybe put a drop here and inject it this way into the mix. So it's this dark grayish bluish look, and I'm just going to apply it on the metallic elements. What it does, that by mixing some black with blue essentially what is happening now is that I'm taking away the shine. So next thing to do is I will just apply a quick touch up on the, I said 40% earlier, now I'll go maybe around 20%, and that will bring back the shine and make it just look much more interesting. And the nice thing is that you can do it while the paint is still drying, just doing some kind of semi-wet blending on the whole thing. Another way is to make it look like old beaten metal and add some brown inks to that, but that's not my approach now. She's a high-ranking guild officer, so I would assume that her weaponry and all her weapons and metal elements that she has on her, well, uniform are in perfect shape. So the silver now for the final highlights. I still have it fresh on my palette, so I'll switch to very thin brush. And this time I'm very lightly, again, like 20% of the metallic surfaces are covered now. And this allows me to get this extra shine in there. Now towards the back. Yeah, it does make it cooler, and I'm actually thinking whether maybe I will just go with one quick glaze of pure athematic blue on top of that, just to kind of take away the shine. And here again, for each link on the chain, I'm going roughly 20%. So it's a bit meticulous, but think about if you were to use it to paint it using the non-metallic metal, that would be even more time consuming. And actually, I would say that one thing that allowed me to become better at painting true metallic metal is painting with non-metallic metal, because get you gain a much better understanding of how darker and shaded areas work once you've painted a few, well, weapons or miniatures with using non-metallic metal technique. Just gives you a more thorough understanding. So again, each link in the chain is given a touch of brighter silver, which takes time. But that's the thing about painting miniatures. Sometimes you just sometimes need to take your time to make things look good. And I will actually use athematic blue, but I will use it more selectively. Actually, yeah, the thing about non-metallic metal is that it has to be done absolutely superbly to look great. Otherwise, you get this kind of cartoonish look, which can be good sometimes. I mean, I've painted this cartoonish looking non-metallic metal on my Pandora crew. I mean, the one that I was painting a while ago. So the Rotten Harvest Pandora. Yeah, and I'm using some patches of athematic blue on the metal as well, just to dull it down and keep it cooler. And that can work. That can work quite well if you're aiming for this cartoonish funny look. But if you want to have this super realistic look while painting with non-metallic metal, then you just need to put in hours, really hours into every single element. If I wanted to do non-metallic metal on those metallic beats, I could take the whole stream just painting metallics. But that wouldn't be that exciting to watch, I believe. So one thing I can recommend for doing nice exercise in non-metallic metal, just use this paint. This one. Just apply it on some kind of gun or chain or whatever you have, and try to add some darker gray to the recessed areas and lighter gray and touch of white to the very edges, and this will make it look really good. Really good. Not great, but very good. And it's not that hard to achieve. So just a recommendation. I think I will go a bit heavier with strong tone around those broken tombstone elements. So I'll just use strong tone, this one, and I will apply it just around it, just to keep it better locked in with the base. So now the elements on the base are more visible because they are kind of framed with darker shade around them, and they will stand out more. I think I will still add a tuft of bright grass on the base. And maybe actually while I have dark brown, I will just use it to make this part darker, because it's just a bit too reddish right now. Too much of red in it, and I want to keep it a bit darker. Okay. Right, time to fan the flames, I guess. And then finish the base. So around 35 minutes left in the stream, plenty of time, and not sure if you can see, but that blue, I'll try to hold it even. If you look at the tip of the handle of the blade, hey, thank you. It's it's all fun when things come together. So now you can see the impact that this athematic blue made on the metallic, because the metallics were highlighted from dark metallic to bright and then given a glaze of athematic blue. Hey, All right, enjoy the dinner with kids, and thanks for dropping by. So that I'm just pausing for a second to show you guys what kind of impact it makes because I think I have a good angle to really show it. Yeah, and the same from the back. All right, now we can actually you can see the details on the chain at the back. Maybe if I remove my hand, I mean remove my hand from the screen, not in a literal sense. It just makes an impact, makes the metallic much more, it makes it look richer. Okay, guess I will now just touch up with pure white the kind of bird skull that she has. It's a bird skull necklace, I believe. Don't know if it has anything to do with fluff or it's just an ornament she chose to wear for the occasion. But it is what it is. Now for the flame. So here's how I'm going to approach it. I'm going to move gradually from bright shades of yellow towards red and then towards black. So essentially for the flames, this is the palette. As you can see, from very, very light, barely yellow through bright and vivid yellow, some orange, some red, heavy red, and then some black, and then potentially some dry pigments, but that's just potentially. I'm not sure if I'm going to go that way. I may just go fluo yellow on that. So for now, let's start with toxic yellow. And what I'm doing now is I'm just making a rough outline of just to make sure that there is some of the previous layer visible and the previous layer will be filled up with white later on anyway. So that's barely even yellow. And out with this one, back to yellow, to this yellow. And we're gradually moving towards orange range now. Just a little bit of water and yeah, back to the screen where you guys can see it hopefully. All right, that's not bad right now, quite a good view. Just being careful not to apply too much of it so that the brighter shade in the recessed areas is visible. So quite different to painting the hair, right? Because with her I was moving from darker shades to brighter, and now I'm moving from brighter shades to darker. And I can actually paint on it while it continues to dry. And I will switch to orange now. So bright orange. Doing this kind of wet blending. And not even cleaning my brush in between the colors. That is beginning to look like fire. Now time for some red. And I don't need to really go immediately straight into red. I can still use that red to mix it a little bit with orange before I apply it. There will be a bit of back and forth because I will still refill the most recessed areas with pure white before I give it a all glaze of fluo yellow and try to create some kind of object source lightning like effect. Yeah, less than 30 minutes, but I'm feeling pretty confident I can finish it before the end of the stream. All right, now for the darker red. I'm going to switch to slightly smaller brush, smaller size of brush, and just looking if it's all visible clearly in the screen. Doing my best, guys, to try to position it in a way that makes it possible to follow. I think she's coming along nicely. Oh, that's a good quality view of the miniature. Yeah. It's funny that, when I look at the screen on Twitch and look at my miniature, obviously I see something slightly different because of the lighting I have. It just affects the miniature, the way I perceive the miniature considerably. But it also indicates clearly areas where I need to improve and areas which I can feel happy about. Like I feel quite happy about how smooth the highlights came out on the pants and all the leather straps. So it looks like she's starting to create some kind of power, well, blah blah blah, tongue twister again, some kind of thing, ball with fire. So some kind of fireball is beginning to form in her hands. And now pure black. For pure black, I'll just use green black because that has the nice consistency, which will give me a bit more control. Oh yeah, that's true. Lightning is such a big part. So now very, very light touches of pure black on those areas where I already have the darkest shade of red. It's like the tip of the flame. And it's time to bring back some of the white in the most recessed areas. So again, going with smallest brush, and we'll try to make it possible for you guys to follow, but I also need to be very precise here because I just want to apply essentially just like tight to the recessed areas. Because the flames are the hottest, they are the brightest where they are the hottest. So the source of heat comes from within rather than outside. I mean, it's a fantasy miniature, so it's a magical fire, so you can paint it however you feel like painting it, but you can already tell even now that her hair doesn't look like fire, it looks quite different, and that was my goal from the beginning. Just make sure that there is good focus on the miniature before I proceed. Okay, should be slightly better. Well, it's not perfect, but you can tell the difference, hopefully. So now to bring, I will start bringing it together. So that's the front view, that's the view from the back. Maybe if I put my hand next to it, it will become more stable. Well, barely, but well, at least not worse. So now what I'm going to start doing to begin to bring things together. Still using white, I'll use my medium-sized brush or dry brush, so thick bristle and solid, fairly solid tip like this one. And I'm going to dry brush some area around the fire. But I need to be really careful and selective about that. So what I'm doing now is I'm just doing some white dry brush on the sleeves. I want it to be white, really white dry brush. And also towards the midsection of the flames here. And also maybe here. See, just not painting it with brush, just want some kind of smooth transition to pure white, because that's where this simple object source lighting like effect will happen, because it's not the kind of meticulous painting contest winning approach that I'm doing now, rather kind of shortcut towards having a really decent result. Maybe also some below here, and that's it. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use fluo yellow and apply it with a brush, with a standard brush, that's what I meant, on those areas. And then we'll see how it works, because it will create this glow-like effect coming off of the from the flame. Now I will paint over the hands, and like I said before, the hands are not that important because they will be barely visible. Let me show it to you guys. Let's see if I can get a good view. Well, not optimal view, but still some kind of view. But it's looking pretty cool from what I can tell. It's just the matter that the effects that I'm working on adding now are really subtle and really hard to show during a stream. I'm just looking if I have any other fluo color that I could use. Maybe I will actually use a light. I mean, I could still mix it slightly with red. So add a quick touch of red, blood red to it, to the fluo color. So that it becomes a bit more like orangish, and try to kind of filter it a bit more to get some more of like temperature difference to the miniature. Now a bit of red just to indicate that the heat is coming this way, but not make it very direct impactful. Maybe a little bit more of fluo yellow. Some more here. Time flies by. It's almost, 15 minutes to go. Not much time, but I'll wrap things up. No problem. I can also add a little bit of white. She's almost ready now. Almost. Now maybe a touch of white towards the middle, towards the most, in the most recessed areas. And then she will be pretty much done. Because that, like, small dots of white towards the middle, towards the in the most recessed areas, will just reinforce this idea that this is a very heavy object she's holding, like very not heavy, very hot object that she's holding, and a very hot fireball. That's for sure. So I won't be adding any dirt effects to the cloak. No, I don't think so. Not to the coat. There is some indication that that it's hotter and brighter here. So now what I'll do is I'll add black to the base, and then it will be almost complete. You can always fine-tune a little bit, but at some point you can just pause and call it ready, I guess. And we are approaching this very moment. I think I can maybe add stipple in some dirt, some like black towards the edges of the coat. To make it look a bit maybe burnt or a bit dirtied. Just a tiny bit. And I'm using this irregular brush because it leaves a bit of irregular pattern. So I'm just randomly, sorry for not keeping it in the middle of the screen. I'll just do better now. It's not a huge difference, but slight difference that I'm adding that. Hopefully you guys can see the difference, the impact it makes, because I think it was a good call to do that. Let's clean the brush. And the only thing that I will do offline, maybe I will even try to take pictures later today, is that I will add a tuft of bright static grass somewhere in the center or towards the front. And that will be essentially it. So we started with just a miniature base coated in white. This is a Sonnia model that comes from the Iconic box, the play size version, the game size version, the 32mm scale. And I would say more than half of the stream was working with this green coat, working from white, neon-like green towards the slightly darker shades in the recessed areas. And while I was applying glazes of gradually darker colors, I started moving to other areas like leather straps, metallics, face, hair, and ended up with this ball of fire that she holds in her hands. So overall, pretty happy with how she turned out. And I think that will be it for today's stream. So thank you guys for taking part in the chat discussion. Make sure that tomorrow you check out Doug, who will be painting something cool, something very cool. I don't want to reveal it. It will be revealed tomorrow. I'm myself going to definitely check it out and see how he approaches painting that miniature. And that will be it for today. So my link to my Instagram has already been posted here in the chat earlier on, but you can always find me. You can, if you have any further questions about any part of the process, I'm more than happy to answer them. And for now, keep on happy painting, keep on playing Malifaux, and I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day, evening, morning, and see you around. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.